Down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings broadcast, and I am your I Don't Lie, I Just Tell Stories host, Rick. So tonight, I caught a piece in terms of like current events. I caught a piece this past week that I think I kind of want to bring your attention to it. And, it's discussing privacy. It kind of has something to do with, I've mentioned it a couple of different times on this show about how whenever you have an app or a service or something that is free to you, that you yourself are the product of that particular app or whatever. I mean, they're going to make money off of you some way, shape, or form. And so this particular piece kind of highlights that. I also have another piece that sort of might scare you a little bit in terms of our privacy and that kind of type of setup. And the other thing is I was privy to a absolute fantastic experience this week, and I wanted to tell you the story about it. So that's my second part of the episode. So we've got two big topics tonight, and I want to bring them both to you. But before I get into that, I obviously have to give a shout out to my subscribers and my viewers. Thank you very much for joining. I definitely appreciate your coming here and taking the few minutes out of your day to allow me to talk to you and discuss things with you and hopefully bring topics of interest to your doorstep. I understand it takes a little bit of time out of your day, and I appreciate the fact that you are giving that time, very precious time, over to me in order to be able to bring you the content that I do on this particular channel. Now, I don't see my normal audio ombudsman Blix out there. At least he hasn't checked in on the chat yet, so I'm kind of hoping that maybe somebody out there will basically tell me whether or not my audio sounds good or not. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Keep in mind that, you know, obviously the stream is like on a 10-second delay from the actual live, so I'll keep going here while I'm looking for some sort of a thumbs up, thumbs down. Yep, everything sounds good kind of deal. Okay, so this week, I got an all good from my very famous co-host, Captain Unicorn. Thank you very much, sir. All right, so as you may know, the reason why I'm putting that out there obviously is because of the fact that I have had some audio issues in the past. So I'm just verifying. Hopefully after a couple more shows, maybe I'll be a little more comfortable with what's going on with the actual setup, and hopefully everything will be all in a good groove. All right. So tonight I saw this article that came out, and it really made me think about the big tech and the censorship that seems to be occurring or happens to be out there. It made me think about all of the different ways that technology has touched our lives. We kind of talked a little bit about technology last week. And in particular, I mean, things like you have the Alexa apps, the Google apps, the Siris, all of those kinds of things where they're constantly listening for a keyword to trigger their algorithms and get things going. And then, of course, you have, you know, the fact that you're on Facebook or Twitter or Parler or Gab or any of these social media platforms. You are out there putting out your data. You're talking about you, and you're talking about all of what you've got going on, and the correlation that they can actually pull from these particular platforms, the social media outlets, all of these different things, and they're pooling it. Of course, all of these things are free. They're all free. With the exception of Gab. I know Gab, you can get a free account, but you can also pay for the service as well. But the reason why these people are doing this is they are actually using you for data mining. I mean, even down to the point of your tags that you get for the grocery store, you know, those special clubs that they have where you go in and you start saving money, and you know, they track on those tags. They're actually tracking and maintaining a database based off of what you buy. And all of this information is being held onto, or for the company use, or it can also be sold to other parties, other interested parties. I even know of applications and things that certain entities, retail in particular entities, have put in where these metrics of, for an example, on security camera systems, the metric of the system can actually tell how long people stay at any one given point. And these metrics are being utilized ideally for additional marketing ploys. So like they can track and see, you know, what stands, what visual displays are actually attracting more attention than others, how long you hang out at those places. And some locations are actually using technology like Bluetooth Low Energy in order to make it so that when you get close to a particular display in the retail chain, that when you get there, it actually pushes an ad or a coupon or something for that particular product to your phone. If your phone is open and available for you to receive those items, it will actually do that for you. And now, some people might look at this and they think, oh, well, this is fine. I mean, this is kind of cool. I get, 20 cents off, 10 cents off, one free, whatever. I mean, this is all fine and dandy. It's all cool for me. But I guess it kind of depends on what you are doing. I mean, I know in particular of a location or a set of people that got broken into when they announced that they were going to be on vacation or out of town on social media platforms, and they got broken into at the same time. Now, whether or not that was done by a stranger or somebody that knows them, we don't know. But the point is that all of these things that we've got going on our phones, all these apps and everything else that are free to us, that are providing services to us, you just have to be cautious and careful in terms of what these things are actually gathering on you. And so I wanted to bring this article to light because it's possible that you may not have seen this. You may not have read this article, but I wanted to bring this to light to you. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over to it. Let me find it here because everything changes on my board for some reason. So we're gonna take a closer look at this, and I want this one here. So this particular article comes from the Washington Examiner, and the Washington Examiner, as you can see, Nihal Christian. I hope I'm pronouncing that person's name correctly. Don't know. They're the technology reporter for the Washington Examiner. And as you can see, 4 hidden ways big tech platforms suck up your data. And one of the things that's amazing about this, of course, and I'm sure that a lot of people have experienced this, when you search for something on the internet, and then all of a sudden you go over to one of these big tech platforms. And by big tech, I'm talking about, Facebook. I'm talking about Amazon. I'm talking about Google. You all of a sudden start to notice that these ads are coming up that are directed at you. They could even be tied to something that you may have just looked up. I know I've experienced this, especially on Facebook. I can tell you because of the Whiskey Musings Facebook page, I get all kinds of ads for different types of whiskeys, whiskey glasses, whiskey paraphernalia. It's kind of amazing how in tune these tech giants actually are. And a lot of this has to deal with, in particular with Facebook, in the article, as you can point here. So just to kind of bring this out, big tech companies such as Facebook, Google, Amazon, they collect personal user data from many different sources and create identities of people in order to understand how the individual user's personality traits, purchasing behavior, predicting that behavior, and ultimately selling these profiles to advertisers and sometimes even the government. Now, somebody might sit here and tell me, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. No. Well, okay, maybe I am. But realistically, this is something that I think everybody needs to understand and needs to know, that you are using these platforms, and I use them too. I'm guilty of it myself. So I am not sitting here trying to preach to the choir or trying to preach that you should be doing something different here. I just need you to understand and realize that those EULAs, those end user licensing agreements that you are seeing in the beginning, you really, really should read through those. And there's times when I don't even read through all of the details because it sounds like a bunch of lawyer gobbledygook. But realistically, what you don't realize is that, as this article is pointing out in the next paragraph, that most often users don't even realize that their data is being collected and exploited by these tech companies. Besides advertisers, millions of people's user data has been sold to U.S. federal agencies for border control purposes, as well as to the military for counterterrorism purposes. Now, here's a piece that I get a little scared about, okay? And especially due to a couple of other articles that came out about the government, for an example, back in January, late January, early February, right before it's late January, sorry, right before the inauguration, they were starting to ask military members what their political affiliations were. And the ones that had what they deemed as questionable affiliations, they sent them home. So they couldn't be guarding the inauguration because of their politics. Now, this is something that's a little scary because you can also think about, especially in certain cases where companies are being targeted. People are getting fired now. There's been stories that have come out about people who have gotten fired for tweets or viewpoints that they might have posted several years ago. And here they are today, they're getting fired. I mean, who knows if they've even changed their viewpoint, or maybe it was a moment of weakness. Maybe it was just misspoken and misconstrued. But regardless, they're being attacked, they're being taken, they're losing their livelihoods because of something that they did several years ago. And this is really scary. And now here's the thing, all of this stuff that I'm about, that you post out there, all of that stuff is considered open source intelligence, or OSINT. And it's because of the fact that you go through and you stick this stuff out on websites and things where it's public information. I mean, we've gotten so used to the ability and to be able to post this stuff. And yes, it's kind of cool. You can take a photo of like what you're eating, where you're at. You can check in at places. I mean, the tech itself is just absolutely phenomenal what it can do nowadays. But we're sitting here and we're looking at this stuff and we're thinking that it is something that we are, that is a convenience to us. But what we don't realize, or what we don't think about, is what this thing is actually doing to you. So in this particular case, user data can also be used by machine learning or artificial intelligence tools that are being used by entities in the criminal justice system to help the government make decisions, including on who should be imprisoned or their ability to enter the country. Okay. Now think about this. Several years ago, there was a movie. It was Tom Cruise was the lead movie. It was called The Minority Report. Now, The Minority Report in particular was talking about murder as an example. And they were looking at future murders. But this kind of stuff, I mean, even here in the article where they're talking about potentially looking at who can be imprisoned in the future, and the person's ability to whether or not they can enter the country. Now, a lot of people would look at this and they think, oh, well, if it's being utilized on foreign entities, that's great. Because foreign entities, we need to watch for this kind of thing in terms of foreign entities. But this is American companies that are doing this on American people. They're doing this on you right now with Facebook, okay, as an example. So let me move on in the article. So there is there's a part in Facebook in particular, and it's called the Off Facebook Activity Tool. And this particular tool, and I've got a link in the show description where to a CNET article that kind of tells you a little bit about how to take it out. Now, it might be a little dated. I tried it on my phone. I've already got the off Facebook activity shut off. There is a way to do it. But you kind of follow a little bit of that CNET article. If you follow that link, you can actually turn this off. But this is the tool. The tool is the reason why that after a user visits like a rollerblade store website in the article, for example, the user is then likely to see ads for rollerblades on his or her Facebook newsfeed. Okay, so or even Instagram, because Instagram is owned by Facebook. Soon thereafter. And what they're saying is that all websites visited and many phone apps send Facebook users digital activity that the social media company then uses to target people with particular ads. Now, this tool is utilized in order so that Facebook can make the money in order to bring the service to you. So again, I go back to the whole point of, if a service is free, that means that you are the product that that company is selling. Okay. Now, it's mostly used for advertising, and this is true. But check this out. Third paragraph down. Several phone apps even send sensitive user data, including health information. So if you're walking around with your phone and you've got like one of those watches that, tracks your health information, like your heartbeat and, how many breaths you take, how many steps you take, those kinds of things, a lot of that stuff will send it. The app will probably send that information to Facebook, even though Facebook, and if you look on the fourth paragraph here, Facebook's terms and conditions to apps developers tell people not to send sensitive health information, but it still accepts that data. It still accepts that data. So this is data that is being collected and sent by different apps on your phone by this off Facebook activity aspect to Facebook. So that being said, I highly encourage you to try and go and shut this thing off. I mean, seriously, shut off the off Facebook activity. Now, this isn't going to eliminate things, but it'll definitely make things a little bit better for you. Now, have you ever gone and I think my next screenshot goes into this. So the article continues with the next offender here. The next offender is Google. Okay, now Google is the most visited website in the US. Now, even I tell people, honestly, that Google is your friend. That is my statement. And the reason why is because Google is literally fantastic at doing the one thing that Google usually does, and that is being able to aggregate all kinds of web searches. Now, if you own a website or if you've ever developed a website, you would know that Google has these bots known as web crawlers. And these bots are going around and finding all kinds of different things that are out there. And I see a square. Let's see if I can get it to go away here. Sorry about this, but I see a square blocking it. Okay, so it has to do with my green screen behind me. But anyway, so Google has these bots that crawl the web, that'll actually go through and crawl around all these websites, and they find this information and they correlate this information so that they can bring you the best searches. But at the same time, this thing is also gathering information, and it's not just the web crawler, but Google itself, the business itself, is gathering information and monetizing its users, going back to the article, in two major ways, according to, and this is a company that you might want to look into, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's a nonprofit digital rights group. So basically what they're saying is that Google actually gathers data to build profiles of people using their interests, location, and demographics to let advertisers target particular groups of people based on those certain traits. And second, it shares some of that data with advertisers directly and requests them to bid on individual ads. Have you ever gone into Google and you've typed something in and the first, 4 or 5, whatever, first, search results have this little square box next to it called ad? That is a paid placement. It is a paid advertisement for that particular website. And so these organizations, these companies can go and pay to have their search results show up first in Google rankings. Now, this obviously is a targeted marketing setup targeted towards you, but they can't do that unless they know that people are searching for specific terms. It's also called search engine optimization, SEO. And this is something where you're using particular terms, particular words, particular phrases to make it to where certain search results pop up. It's the same thing with hashtags. Everybody thinks, oh, hashtags are cute, they're cool, but they're basically tags that are being utilized for search engine optimization tools to be able to find items on the internet fast and efficient. But yet at the same time, these companies are utilizing these tools at the same time to be able to rank systems, rank things in order to bring up things within your search engine in order to provide advertisement for you. Because honestly, a lot of people are no longer necessarily watching television. They're not watching cable. There's a lot of people that have cut the cord. And so the only way to get to these advertisements and these advertisers is to gather all of this information and this data and present it to you on the internet. Okay. Now, so let's go moving into the selling of the user data, the second paragraph here. So Google helps third-party ad placement in a complicated process known as real-time bidding. So the ad bidding system is a system which websites and publishers auction off ad space. This is what I'm talking about in terms of those top level orders. On their sites or in their apps. The same thing goes with websites. If you develop a website, you look at all the ads that are on the sides of the website. You've got like maybe the main article in the middle, and you've got all kinds of ads on the sides. Banner placement. You download an app, as an example, you download an app, it's free to you, but yet you have ads in it. The reason being is because that individual, whoever created that app, is making money off of the fact that they are selling space on their app to these users to make money. Okay. But if you'll notice, some of those ads, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes those ads are actually targeted based on information, things that you have searched for, you have looked up, maybe your particular interests or whatever. Maybe you're into, soccer. Maybe you're into NFL. Maybe you're into hunting. It doesn't matter. It's going to pop up because those profiles of organizations such as Facebook and Google have created a profile on you and have been able to target certain companies for that particular profile for you to see those ads. Now, browsing history, things like that, and even if you clear your browsing history, some of this stuff doesn't even matter, even if you clear your browsing history. Now, one of the things as far as a browser is concerned, you have, it used to be Internet Explorer. I can't remember what it's called now. I think it's called Internet Edge. So you have Edge, you've got Firefox, you've got Chrome. Chrome obviously is owned by Google, so they have all of this stuff in Chrome. There is another another browser out there that claims to be ad-free, which is called Brave. Gab actually took Brave and cut off or spun off their own type of browser called Dissenter, and I've been playing around with that. But even Mozilla recently was in the news because they are starting to do similar things with their browser, which everybody thought that Firefox was free and clear, but anything that's built off of Mozilla now has a potential to be in this same not quite so private space. And so everybody's been doing Firefox thinking Firefox is all secure and ad-free or protected, private, that kind of stuff. And now that's even starting to move away from what people originally thought. And there's been some people who have expressed interest in that particular part of Mozilla's choices to do this. So, as far as what I would recommend, try Brave, try Dissenter. If you're really concerned about it, I would take a look at both of those as possibilities. I'm sure there's some other ones out there, but those ones seem to be gaining a lot of attention and a lot of attraction in that case. So now, moving on. So now, some of Google's user data even makes it into the hands of law enforcement through a particular database called Sensorvault, okay, which stores user user location data indefinitely. Okay, so one thing that a lot of people think of is they think Android devices. They're like, hey, Android devices, woo, user location data, you are being tracked. I have an Android device. I'm going to be honest with you. I have an Android device. iOS devices probably do something very similar because I know that Apple is doing very similar things. But Apple, at least in the past, has stood up to the FBI in particular. But Google takes a lot of its users' location data and it utilizes it to use things like Google Maps to be able to influence things. For an example, the drive times and the traffic information that you see on Google and even with Waze, WAZE, all of that comes from information that is being garnered from your phone, your Android phone, by Google. To be able to predict things like traffic movement and stuff like that. Now, this is a convenience for us. Absolutely. It's a convenience for everybody. I mean, I've used it before. Google Maps is actually pretty decent in my experience. It's also helped me get around things like traffic accidents and things like that especially when I'm in cities and places that I'm not familiar with. But you need to consider the fact that these particular applications are gathering this data and they're putting it into a database, and they're starting to see and do things called data mining out of this stuff, and they're passing it on to either law enforcement or they're passing it on to other companies and organizations. Now, chances are they probably anonymize the particular users in case in point. I can't imagine, unless law enforcement actually goes and is looking at a particular user. Okay, maybe they anonymize this stuff. I honestly don't know, but it still is kind of concerning, especially when we as Americans value our privacy so much. We value the fact that everything is private in our lives. So here it's saying Google says toward the end here, Google says that users have to opt in to the location data collected in Sensorvault, but the search giant makes it difficult to not opt in. And many users may not understand that they have done so. So this is something that you need to take a look at. So for an example, I have my location data is typically turned off, and I get warnings from other applications where it talks about, hey, if you can get a more accurate result if you have your location data turned on. So, you need to start, if you have an Android device in particular, you need to start paying attention to those warning signs. You need to start paying attention to those warning messages, because they are going to tell you in particular what might be going on with what type of data is being collected on you by these particular apps and services. Okay? So now, moving on with the piece. So here we have Amazon. So we've gone through Facebook, we've gone through Google. Now here's Amazon. So Amazon also uses online tracking tools to follow customers' online behavior or other websites, even after they leave Amazon.com. The retail giant does not disclose the name or identity of its users to the advertisers, but it nevertheless serves user ads based on brand's behalf by leveraging the user's past behavior, often without that user's knowledge. So if you think about that, I've seen this in the past too, where I've searched for something and then all of a sudden I see an ad for it on Amazon. I've searched for something in my web browser on my phone, and then the next time I open up the Amazon app, that's one of the things that are being suggested to me to buy. And so, all of this stuff is going on in the background. And the funny thing is that even though these things are convenient for us, we're still willingly giving this information to these people. And now, again, a lot of this stuff is going to be buried inside of that EULA that you have to agree to in order to be able to use the applications. But it's still kind of scary. I mean, if you're talking about a surveillance state, which, America seems to be moving to. Now, the government supposedly has restrictions. We'll get to that in a minute, but has restrictions on what it can do with that data. However, it's still scary to think about that you have these applications, these big tech companies that are technically outside the law that are providing this information to not only other entities, but also to the government as well. Now, back to the article. In the past few months, Amazon has spied. Okay, so this should really pique your radar here, all right? Has spied on its workers to track and bust union organizing activity and is installing cameras on its trucks with always-on 360-degree surveillance capability of drivers as well as the public. Okay, some senators have questioned this new initiative. Now, if you live in London, I've heard from different sources that London is one of the most surveilled cities in the world. I can tell you Las Vegas is one of the most surveilled cities here in the US. A lot of cities are catching up with this stuff. You start adding things like Amazon trucks, Google Earth, Google Maps. You can go and get a street view of almost every single building that these things have ever moved by. Now, granted, the stuff that's in Google Earth and Google Maps is still images. It's not live video. But just imagine what would happen if you're going along and you're going throughout your day and law enforcement decides to want to track your movement and you have all of these video cameras that are out there for you to get tracked by. Okay. So we can no longer assume, literally, I'm telling you this, we can no longer assume that when we are in public spaces that we are not being videotaped, not being audio taped, not being tracked in any way, shape, or form, realistically. Okay. Now, many, many years ago, I took a course on private investigations. And one of the things that came out of that course was the fact that we had to, for the state, and this was in the state of Washington at the time, that we had to understand the impact of the right to privacy on our work. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was that legally at the time, I don't know if the rules in Washington have changed. The revised code of Washington, or the RCW, has changed since then. But the way that it was broken down to us was if somebody was standing on their front porch and they were in their underwear, okay, you could take a photograph of that person because they were standing in a public space. However, if they stepped back inside their home, even if the door was open or the blinds were open on the window, you could not take a photograph of that individual inside their home because they had what was termed in the legal term a reasonable expectation of privacy. The same thing goes with having a fence around a backyard. You could, and let's say there was a road that was up above the backyard. So theoretically, you could go up on that public road and look down into the backyard of the house. Well, the problem was that at the time, the RCW basically said that if someone was in their backyard and it was fenced, that was a reasonable expectation of privacy on the part of that citizen. And so therefore, we could not take photographs of that individual in that backyard because they expected that they would have privacy there. Having a car on a public street, because obviously this is private investigations. You have a lot of things where you have cheating spouses. So having somebody who may be cheating in a car or having, intercourse in a car or something like that on a public street, there was some gray area there, but you still had to kind of shall we say, err on the side of caution because it would be in somebody's personal vehicle. And so they would believe that they would have a reasonable expectation of privacy within that vehicle. So that's where the law has kind of stepped up and helped us out. But a lot of this stuff is in the process of being changed. And the idea, the Patriot Act, actually, after 9/11, the Patriot Act knocked down a lot of this stuff. It changed some of the legal requirements for this stuff to happen. And again, it's this next piece that I'm going to get to actually kind of outlines a little bit of that. So moving on here. So the next piece out of this is there are online or web browser plugins that are being put into your web browsers, and this is where I'm kind of looking at like Mozilla and Microsoft Edge and those kinds of things, where and websites too. They also have the ability to put in plugins. Which in this particular case, this is called a share tool. And this allows companies to go ahead and track and profile website visitors and make money off of that data, like who you visit. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen these things in terms of cookies. If you've ever seen any warnings about, this site uses cookies, a lot more today than what you might have seen 5 years ago. And the reason for that was because of the recent change in Europe with regard to data privacy laws that had changed over there, to where now if somebody from Europe had visited, in particular London, I think in the main one, but if they visited a website that had cookies enabled, they would have to plaster this warning across the website saying, hey, your data is being tracked. You are being tracked. There's settings within your browser that you can do that can sometimes alleviate some of this, such as, don't accept cookies from, this website, or don't accept third-party cookies. I'm speaking in particular of like Mozilla Firefox as an example. But there are ways to try and mitigate some of this, but it's not 100% foolproof. And especially because of the fact that a lot of these websites will make it so that where if you don't enable those cookies, you may not see the website properly, that it might not render correctly to you. And so you'll get frustrated and you'll leave the website, of course, either that or you'll enable the cookies because you want to see what the website can offer you. Okay. So going to the article again, this business model is not unique, and many companies in the online advertising space collect users' personal data through free services or features. Millions of people's data is secretly taken from them in this manner without their awareness, according to Privacy International, which is a digital rights group in the United Kingdom. And this, again, Privacy International was one of the major ones that kind of put in, I think they call it the GDPR, Global Data Privacy Reform, I think was originally what it. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that acronym. But still, the point being here is that everything that you do online is being tracked. Everything that you do in public is being tracked. And so if you even remotely believe that you have an ounce of privacy, even with the privacy laws that we have within the US, there are ways that these companies are getting around these situations. And so I'm just going to take a second here. I just want to see, because I definitely don't want to ruin the next thing. So I'm just going to take that off. Let me just make sure. Yep. Okay. So that's prepping for the next article that I want to talk about. Takes this information and, I correlated this. I correlated this from the two articles, but it gives you an idea on what might be happening, especially here in the US with regards to your privacy. So what I'm going to show you now is this is it's kind of an opinion piece, honestly, and it's by Judge Andrew Napolitano. I don't know if anybody's seen him. He's on Fox. He does articles about legal and privacy and that kind of stuff. So anyway, he wrote this opinion piece just the other day about the coming war on privacy. And there were a couple of facts in here that he threw out that I haven't verified, so I'm not going to say I verified this, but it's kind of interesting that this individual has put their name on this and not verified this stuff. But moving into it, you can say that. So one of the things that came out, I don't know if anybody watched, but you have, and I got to find his name here, the new Attorney General put out, was part of his thing on Capitol Hill, was he was talking about the potential of predicting crimes, not prosecuting crimes, but predicting crimes, and how he wanted to focus on predicting crimes. And so in this particular case, Judge Napolitano is saying that this is dangerous business for the Department of Justice to engage in, because it transforms its role from prosecuting crime after they happen to predicting who would commit crimes that never get there. Think of Minority Report. That is exactly what the movie outlines, is that it goes through and uses people's profiles in order to predict crime and prosecute these people before the crime even happens. Okay, so this is scary, because now he asks the question, how can the feds predict crime? And what it is they'll attempt to do so by a serious uptick in domestic surveillance of broad categories of people based on political and ideological views. The government loves to cast out fishing nets, so to speak, and then intimidate or prosecute whomever they bring in. Okay, so here's an example of this. In the next, I'll tell you my thoughts here in a second, but the National Security Agency, the NSA, has it has 60,000 person strong domestic spying apparatus. Okay, now the NSA was key and crucial in a lot of our foreign adversaries, a lot of checking out our foreign dignitaries and tracking foreign people within the U.S. who are looking to do us harm. So they already capture, key point here, all data transmitted on fiber optic cable into, out of, and within the U.S. Now, this is interesting. The NSA already captures all of this, okay? So every email, every text, every phone call, but they don't admit to it. Okay, so when the FBI desperately sought to gain entry of the cell phone of two deceased mass murderers in San Bernardino, California, this was a really big, a big case that came up a few years ago. The NSA would not help them, because if they did, they would not acknowledge that the NSA is mass warrantless spying. Now, some of this stuff was actually made possible by the Patriot Act, and there were a lot of proponents for, because the argument could be made, and it seems logical, that, hey, we want to keep an eye on foreign people within our country. But the challenge here really is how far does this stretch, and how far does this actually go? Okay, so rather than just looking at foreign nationals, they're also looking at interactions between foreign nationals and American people. So now you're actually spying on American people without a warrant. Okay, so this is scary. So here's the thing. Okay, and Judge Napolitano goes on here. He says under the unconstitutional standards employed by the FISA court. Okay, key point here: the FISA court. All right, if the feds present probable cause of an American's communication with a foreign person, the FISA court could issue, or would issue in this case, a search warrant for surveillance of all communications with that American. This right here, that first thing, is exactly what they did to spy on the Trump campaign back in 2016. This is exactly what they did. They found what they thought was probable cause in order to start spying on the Trump campaign. This right here is exactly why we have a problem with this, because this is unconstitutional. And this is the second paragraph, because the standard for obtaining search warrants from a judge is articulated in the Fourth Amendment in the Constitution, which neither Congress nor the courts can change at this point. That standard is probable cause of a crime. Okay, you have to have suspicious activity and probable cause to search somebody's home. This is why understanding your constitutional rights is so important. So important on this. Okay, so he continues. That standard is the probable cause of crime. Is it more likely not that the place to be searched contains evidence of crimes, not probable cause of communication with the foreigner? So whenever you hear of things like probable cause in court cases, and you hear this a lot, okay, you have to understand that anything that is obtained by a search warrant, that search warrant, believe it or not, really has to be fairly specific. The police under the Fourth Amendment, when they present this to a judge, more often than not, what they have to do is they have to say specifically, this is what we are looking for. This is what we are looking in to find what we are looking for. They need to know what's there in order to go and search. Because if they can't do it, it's known as a fishing expedition, and that is illegal under the Constitution. Okay? Now, continued in the article, the former is a high standard intended to compel the courts before issuing search warrants to take account of the natural right to privacy, preventing government fishing expeditions, as I just pointed out, and force the government to focus its law enforcement efforts on real, not imagined crimes. So the standard for doing a search warrant in the United States is that they have to have probable cause. They have to have rightful suspicion of the fact that a crime has been committed. And they have to have details and specifics as to where this crime or where this evidence is going to be from, where they're going to obtain it, and what particular evidence are they really looking for. Okay? Now, the FISA standard, and here's where we contrast this with the FISA warrant. The FISA standard, which is morphed by a series of secret judicial opinions for probable cause of being a foreign agent to probable cause of communication with a foreign agent to probable cause of communicating with a foreign person. It's easier for a federal agent to demonstrate that you've had communication with a foreign entity than it is to actually demonstrate probable cause of a crime. It means that if a call to somebody like a cousin in Florence, that call by itself is sufficient data for the feds to get a search warrant to legally surveil all of the communications, telephone, texting, emails. So any kind of communication under the FISA system is open and available for all they have to do is just show that you've had communication with a foreign entity. And then they can get a hold of your records and search through everything without, again, looking at the specifics. Was there a crime committed? Do you have probable cause to go look for it? Where is that located? And what evidence are you specifically looking for? These are things that this should actually scare you. This whole idea of the FISA standard should actually scare you. And this is part of the reason why the whole Trump spying thing back in 2016, they call it now the Russian Gate scandal. That whole scandal is scary because of the fact that they did this. They obtained a FISA warrant on what appeared to be, and especially now, what appeared to be a fallacy, a fake document that was bought and paid for by the alternative or the other party. Okay. I'm trying to remember. I don't know how many of these screenshots I have. Okay. So Garland, that's the guy's name. Here we go. So the danger in the devotion of Garland when he was questioned about this to predicting who would commit crimes, this is the danger, is the ability of the FISA court to be able to just issue warrants on communications. Okay. And Judge Napolitano says, or predicts, it will get worse. So excuse me. So we have a court that is essentially issuing warrants for communications on less than what the Constitution, and he talks about this in terms of the Fourth Amendment in the article, that it's utilizing a lower standard of proof in order to obtain warrants on American citizens. And this is a problem because, in the years following 9/11, here at the bottom, hundreds of folks in America were set up by the Fed, by federal agents, and prosecuted and convicted for crimes that they never committed, but which they merely agreed to commit when persuaded by an undercover agent. And a lot of this has to deal with FISA, with the FISA warrants. Okay. This is scary. This is scary. This right here, this article is scary to think about. Okay. Even right now, I'm sure this broadcast is actually being listened to. So, realistically, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't really paying attention to this stuff a lot when I was younger, but I'm starting to now, and it's really starting to concern me. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that away from the screen because I want to make sure. I want to see if there's anything more. Nope, there is not. All right. So the thing about it is that I think a lot of people are, and actually I'm going to throw this up. A lot of people are missing is that utilizing these social media applications, and it's not just like Facebook and Twitter and all of these things. It's actually even beyond that. It's companies like TikTok, which is actually, unless I miss my guess, it was part of a Chinese entity. There was some conversations when Trump was in office regarding TikTok and having it being purchased by an American company. In particular, in this case, I believe it was Microsoft that was looking at or bidding to get TikTok. And so, there's a lot of these things that are out there, a lot of these applications, a lot of these convenience items that are doing things in the background that you may or may not be aware of if you're not reading the EULAs, if you're not paying attention to what kind of data they're actually grabbing for you, from you, and utilizing that in putting it into a database in order to track you, in order to quantify you, in order to be able to what would seemingly be a marketing perspective. But again, a lot of these organizations are actually forwarding these to federal entities. Now, this becomes a real scary potential problem because of the things that have happened here in recent history, especially things like Twitter. And Facebook banning people for just their conservative views, as an example, banning, the president at the time, the president of the United States. This should be concerning to all people. It doesn't matter who it is. I mean, I don't necessarily care about your political ideology. That is up to you to make that choice. I don't necessarily care about some of your viewpoints. That is up to you. That is your choice. That is the beauty of living in America. What I have a problem with, though, is when organizations start to take a expressed interest in cutting down these alternative voices to try and make it to where you are in an echo chamber of the same viewpoints, the same ideas. This is where things are a problem. This is where things can get dangerous, and especially in terms of the idea of, silencing particular opposing viewpoints. That is really pushing it. And it's pushing it. It's really getting to the point of where things like Nazi Germany were able to take effect. It doesn't take that much. We are right on the precipice, realistically, of this. We've already given up some of this some of our privacy, and we're willingly doing it because we're handing this stuff over to these companies to track our data, to track our movements, to track what we do, what we see. And then you start seeing things like Amazon canceling books, where they're taking books off the shelves of people that they may not agree with, that the company itself may not agree with. And a lot of people argue, okay, that company can do that because that's a private company. You know what? I'm right there with you. I agree. We have to have the freedom to be able to do that. But at the same time, you also need to understand that companies like Amazon, who make up 60, 70, sometimes 80% of the market share, that becomes a dangerous precedent. That becomes a dangerous issue. And especially when dealing with things like legalities, warrants, searches, communications, seizures, all of these things, and especially privacy. Now, there's certain things that you can do. You can do things like you can get a VPN service. Like I know, Dan Bongino and I don't think Rush Limbaugh, but like Dan Bongino and Ben Shapiro, they have ExpressVPN. They advertise on their websites and their podcasts. Okay, so ExpressVPN is a service that you can get that provides you with an app that when you click on that app, it basically puts all of your data into a VPN encrypted tunnel, sends it to their servers, and those servers in turn push the stuff out on the internet after they've made sure that your IP and your information, your identifiable information, is taken and stripped out of it. So it makes it look like it's coming from the ExpressVPN servers and not your own home. Those are certain things that you can do. As far as your email is concerned, if you get concerned about this, you can actually use services. There was a new one, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting it, but there is a new service out there that discusses things like your emails, and it's a new service that Dan Bongino just got them as a new sponsor. But they encrypt your data. You can use keys like Pretty Good Privacy, PGP. You can use keys between you and the other person, the other user, and you can encrypt your data that way. There are certain ways that you can work on this and work with this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the government can't break it or break into it if necessary. Okay, so there are things that you can do. Obviously, the big one is don't do things like use Facebook, use Amazon, use Google. That's a little difficult in today's day and age, and I completely understand that because, again, I use it. But we need to understand, we need to actually take the extra step, the extra time to start thinking about what it is these companies are actually gathering on their applications and what they are using our data for. The whole idea of the HIPAA laws came into play because of the fact that we dealt with things of this nature. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and toss up the phone number. If you have any comments, questions, anything that you want to say in regards to that particular topic, then feel free to go ahead and call in. We'll get you on the program. We'll talk about it. But I'm going to move on now and wow, I talked to that for an hour, but I'm going to move on now to, and give you a little lighthearted story here to end the evening. I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, for the entire evening, but I want to give you a little story. I had an incredible experience this week. Okay. I had the opportunity, to go and visit a certain area, and as a part of my job, and I'm not going to tell you the area, but I had the opportunity to go and visit this very special place. It was a magical place. It was a place that I can't even really describe it very well, but I can tell you I was given the opportunity to see things, to taste things, to have my senses assailed with this wonderful and indescribable, fantastic experience. And so I want to bring a little bit of that to you. Unfortunately, I only have a couple of items from this place, but But I have a couple of items here that I wanted to bring to your attention. So while the phone number is going to disappear here in a second, I'm going to go back to, and wait a second. Actually, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll just do this. Yeah. Okay. So, this is just incredible to me. So here's an image of something that I never thought that I would have seen. I never thought I would have seen this. And this is just incredible. This is just absolutely incredible. And I got to find, where is this at? Oh, it's right here. Okay. So this is an image of the first thing that I was greeted going to this incredibly special place. Okay. Check that out. That, yes, people, that is a unicorn. The unicorns do exist. And I was able to go there. I was able to break bread with one of these wonderful creatures. And this particular creature was able to create a human food meal that was absolutely incredible. Okay. I mean, it was meat that was cooked to utter perfection, to the point where the flavor was incredible. It melted on my palate. The potato that I ate with it was simply done, but yet exquisite in its capability. It was just absolutely amazing. I honestly could not. It was incredible. And so I wanted to explore a little bit more. And thankfully, these creatures, they were able to bring me into their fold, and we had wonderful conversations, absolutely wonderful conversations after this incredible meal. We had these wonderful conversations, and then I was treated to this magical light show. I have no idea where it came from, but all of a sudden, the entire space that we were in, popped up with all these fascinating colors, and they were swirling around and changing, and it was an incredible light show. One that I mean, it's really hard to describe. It was a kaleidoscope of color all throughout the space. And then folks, I was taken to a special factory, and this factory, I'm going to tell you, I will never look at this particular item the same ever again. I was fortunate enough to get out of there with about a 15-second or less clip of this amazing thing. They didn't realize that I had my video running, but check out this video. You have got to see this.
This is where your ice cream comes from. The creamy poop of a mystic unicorn. Totally clean, totally cool, and soft served straight from a sphincter. They're good at pooping.
I mean, seriously, that's where ice cream comes from? Holy cow. And apparently, when they get constipated, they'll put glitter. They'll put glitter on the ice cream. I cannot believe this. All these years, I thought ice cream came from an ice cream maker that had, the rock salt, and you had to push it around, you had to roll it around, whatever, make it cold. No, all you have to do is go to this place and you can get this fantastic ice cream. This is amazing. It is so fantastic. I could not believe this place. I could not believe where this place is. I can't tell you where it is. It's a very, very special location. Okay. I started the show with the whole statement that I cannot lie and I only tell stories. That was my story. And unfortunately, I cannot lie. The ice cream part is false. That actually is part of a commercial. Ironically, if you have the opportunity to look up the on YouTube, the article or the commercial called the Squatty Potty. Okay. I can't claim copyright to this. I really can't. This is that was the beginning of the commercial for the Squatty Potty, people. I mean, wow, this was it was hilarious. Yes, I did. So this week I was able to go on a business trip. And when I went, I was able to meet up with Captain Unicorn and enjoy dinner. And he presented me with the Squatty Potty commercial. Oh my goodness. All right. Anyway. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to toss out here, and this is going to be the one and only time that I ever bring this up. But at least I hope, unless they do something else that's really stupid. Okay. So we all know about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Well, apparently she is reportedly looking for, or considering, I should say, a presidential run. Yeah. I'll just leave it at that. However, one of Meghan Markle's and Prince Harry's fans, I'm sorry, you're going to have to check this out. You're just going to have to check this out. Oops, wrong one. Hold on. I took it to the wrong one. There we go. So Meghan Markle and Prince Harry one of their fans created a GoFundMe page that ends after a dismal showing. Now, the whole purpose of this GoFundMe page was because apparently Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, after the interview or whatever, they were talking about how, living in a $14 million mansion or whatever, their whole experience and everything else. So this fan decided to set up a GoFundMe page in order to be able to pay for that mansion. That was the whole purpose of the GoFundMe page. I mean, seriously, we're talking about a former royal and a former actress who both make a ton of money or have a ton of money. And they went ahead, and this fan, granted, probably was, out of the goodness of their heart, created this GoFundMe page. But check this out. This is an article that was actually out there. But check this out. The GoFundMe, the GoFundMe page had a dismal showing. So it was set up to pay off the mortgage on their $14.6 million California estate. And it raised a whopping $110. Not $100,000. Not even $1,000. But we're talking about $110. Now, I don't know who Anastasia Hansen is. She's 56. She started the fundraising effort because she seriously, okay, check this out, seriously felt sorry for the multimillionaire royal couple after they publicly whined to Oprah Winfrey about being financially cut off from Buckingham Palace. Okay, I'm sorry. Occasionally you run across those things where you have to just ask the question. You seriously just have to ask the question, what the hell were you thinking? Wow. All right. So I'm going to leave that to you. That is the final Whiskey Musings thought for the evening. Thank you very much for joining. I appreciate it. As always, hit the subscribe button and definitely hit the little bell on the YouTube channel so that you can be notified of my uploading of videos or going live. Do me a favor, reach out to your friends and your neighbors. Have them at least look at the channel, see if they're interested. If they are, encourage them to subscribe. Otherwise, be safe. Be safe with your data in particular, because now you may have an idea of what these companies might be doing with it. And we'll catch you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.